And good. Oh gosh, I haven't put my green screen down. I knew there was something on my list to do, and that was the thing. Anyway, I shall transport myself into the infinite. There we go. And yeah, welcome back to Monday, and the professionalism continues as ever. And my head's not even straight. What's going on? Oh dear, oh dear, dear, dear. Not been a good start. It's been a long day, actually. It's been one of those Mondays. Never mind. There we go. Anyway, hello, hello, welcome everybody. Commander Terrakoff is here. GR988 is here. Karumba is here. Wintermute is here. Nimduskin is here. Chris Viking is here. Alan RP32, no 42 is here. Birdbrain is here as well. Sean is here. Everyone's here. Clyde Dark Jedi is here as well. Excellent. Ah dear. Yes, I am in fact the Wizard of God. In fact, I don't exist in an ethereal space. I am actually sitting in my study. I'm not a torso floating in space, alas not. Yeah. I aspire to be a torso floating in space. Is that a Jupiter happy? Well, I suppose it is sort of. Yeah, it's not specifically Jupiter. It's just sort of a averagely gassy giant with a small ring. I'm hoping to get some more hat pins for Christmas. I put them on my Christmas wish list, so we'll see what turns up. Anyway, Sean says, "Good evening from fellow travellers of the Waffleverse. Time to take up the shield of digression and grasp in the sword of distraction. Prepare to do battle with the editors and evil publishers over the land of the written word. Forward until victory." Pretty good. That's very inspired. Commander J9 waves. Hello. Evening to everybody else. It's going to be one of those streams. It usually is. It usually is one of those streams. True. Is it the Wizard of Oz? I always like the Wizard of Oz, actually. That particular bit where it's like bow before me and all that sort of stuff. It's just the guy behind the thing pulling the controls. So much of life is like that, alas, isn't it? It's really, really cool. Oh, no, maybe it's not. I do like green screens are magic, though, aren't they? I mean, because look, they could just sort of pull back the fabric, literally the fabric of the universe. It's just, I don't know, there's something very, very childish in me that just likes green screens and the fact that you can muck about doing what you could do with them. And of course, this technology is like, we could do it at home now with PCs, where it was the privilege of the big television companies years gone by. So there we go. Yes. Sorry, Chris. I am not a torso floating in space. You have indeed been betrayed. First time, Rune Knight 3, good day. I am new here and was advised I might be able to glean some writing secrets as you drop them in your wake. Well, I will do my best. First off, welcome Rune Knight 3. It's always good to have new folks along, so thank you very much. We are very informal on this on this Twitch stream, highly professional, as you can see. But we generally do get some writing insights occasionally, but you will have to wade through some more. But it's worth it. It's a very informal and fun. However, if you do have specific questions, please do drop them in the chat, because I will endeavour to take questions seriously. That makes sense. So there we go. So yes, it takes me a while to get to the topic du jour, topic of the day, we ease ourselves into the hot discussion about things. So that's good. Now, one thing I did want to pick up. Now, I don't want to put Alan on the spot because I know he's here. GR1988. I've just outed him on Twitch there. That's not very professional either, is it? Sorry, Alan. Oh, I did it again. I think everyone there is Alan, actually. Alan achieved a rite of passage this week with his latest novel. Just looking at Wintermute's comment there. We're so laid back, we have trouble seeing over our hips. Alan got the rite of passage this week. It's fine, that's good. I'm going to do it anyway. So, he got his first 1-star review. Was it just a 1-star, Alan, or did they actually say something? Don't tell him, Pike. That's right. Kelly Baglar's here as well. Hello, good evening, fellow chatterers. And the Shadow Wyvern too. Good to don't tell him his name, Pike. That's such a brilliant piece of writing. Because everyone looks around, kind of fourth wallish, don't they? And go. That's really good. Well, that's a good point. Other Alan, if you don't reveal his name, how will anyone know about his book? So Alan, bless him, he's recently published his first proper novel, and he's got his first 1-star review. Now, do we know anything about that? Okay, so it's JL9 here. Nope, just the 1 star, no comments. Just that tweet has absolutely blown up. That's really fun. That's quite ironic, really, isn't it? There you go. You're on Twitter. You're a new author, right? And you're promoting your book. Okay, and you're typing in all the good stuff, all the hashtags for everything, right? And you're promoting your book away, and you get 5 people like it, 15 people like the next tweet, 25 people maybe like the next one. Then you publish, and you get a 1-star review. And actually, in this case, it is literally just a 1-star review. There's nothing else, no other words at all. And you put on your Twitter. What did you actually say on Twitter, Alan? You said something like, "Oh, I'm a real author now. I've got my first 1-star review," or something like that. Tweet goes viral. I was watching it. How far has it got? Let's. I'm going to look it up now. Sorry, Alan. I just think this is how Twitter works. Okay, so you're out there trying to promote your book, being all kind of vaguely professional. Where is it? There we go. Where is the tweet? I can't find it. 432 likes. I don't think I've ever had a tweet with that many likes. I think you're doing really well. Everybody now knows who Alan is. The only small problem with that is now everybody knows that Alan, the guy with 1 like, the 1-star review guy. Unfortunately, it's just the way Twitter works. Dear, never mind. Poor old Alan. But it's a rite of passage, my friend. You're doing well. You've cracked the secret of Twitter. So that's good. So you've done good, my friend. You've done good. But it's ironic, isn't it? Yeah, you go through all that sort of process, and you're trying your hard to promote yourself and get people to review your books and blah 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 blah, and boom, things just go up for the wrong reasons. But there we go. And Kelly Bagler is quite right there. A 1-star review means you are a proper author, so you can absolutely rest easy in that now. Ellen, you have achieved you have achieved greatness. It has been thrust upon you. So there we go. Alan says, I'm a proper author, I've been rejected by a publisher. So it's interesting how many of us perceive all the negative things. Yeah, that means I've really arrived. Yeah, okay, 1-star review, been rejected here, got a rejection letter there, all that sort of stuff. Yep, we've all... that means we're doing it properly. So that's quite fun. Dear oh dear. It's a strange thing. And you're sort of left wondering with reviews like that, aren't you? I mean, if you get a 5-star review or a 1-star review, but there are no words, I mean, what does that mean? It could be nothing more innocuous than somebody accidentally clicked a button and didn't even notice and then refreshed the screen and moved on. I mean, you just don't know, do you? Without any words. I mean, I've got some 1-star reviews. And some... The annoying thing, I've got some 1-star reviews on Amazon, and some of the annoying things about my 1-star reviews is it's things like, didn't mean to buy this, can't refund it. 1-star review. I was like, but that's not my fault. You're an idiot. You clicked the wrong button, and now I've got a 1-star review. What did I do? What did I do to deserve this? Oh dear. So, it's not good. I think it's because rejections and bad reviews are seen as right to pass. You're probably quite right, Chris. You're probably quite right. A view authorship, says Runite 3, like the task of Sisyphus. I've been paid for my work before, great, but now I have to do it all over again. Well, they do say that, don't they? I mean, that's yet another writing cliche, isn't it? You're only as good as your last book. But there you go. Apparently there's no such thing as bad publicity. Well, I don't know about that. Have you seen Prince Andrew recently? Let's not go there. Jerky streaming to the North Isles tonight, says Sean. Well, that's a bit strange. I don't know. Is anybody else experiencing any problems? Could just be one of those Twitch things, but there we go. There we go. I need to submit some work so I can get rejected as well. Yeah, you do have to submit some work, Chris. That's right, you got to put something in. I'm not going to be too sad about it, says Alan. I've gained about 70 more followers. Well, there you go. See, it's all win. It's all about having a positive mental outlook, isn't it? That's quite good. Dru's book, Elite, no reclamation. That's right, that's the 1-star review. So, you allowed an idiot to buy your book? Yeah, well, I mean, what can I do? A good review is one where the person who's reviewing it, even if they, I mean, I don't mind a 1-star review if somebody is, explains themselves well, and I don't mind a 5-star review. Obviously, if somebody explains themselves well, the ones that are not very satisfying, exactly in this category, like 1 star, no words. Okay, so didn't you like the book? I mean, was it the wrong colour? Are you just having a bad day? I have no idea. And sometimes you get 5-star review and it says something like good book. It's like, why did you go to the effort of doing that? So that's a bit strange as well. I've had a 5-star review that started off with the phrase, haven't read this book yet but believe it will be good. 5 stars. It's like, I don't think you've understood how reviews are supposed to work. It's not an anticipation of how good the book you think is going to be. Just to give the review afterwards. So there are some interesting people out there who at least go via Amazon and Goodreads. The best reviews generally, I find, are usually the 2, 3 and 4-star reviews, actually, because they usually tell you something a little bit more about the book or the process that the reader went through when actually reading the book. So 2-star reviews are usually, I didn't like it, but... and 4-star reviews are usually, I liked it, but... whereas 3-star reviews are, well, there were bits in it that I didn't mind, and some bits were quite good, and some bits I really didn't like. And these are the, this is the breakdown. So 2, 3, 4-star reviews actually could be quite interesting. At the end of the day, a sale is a sale. I suppose that's true as well. Yeah. Parapsychology thrillers. No need. What was the book like? Yes, it will be good. That's right. It's very, very strange. Rune Knight 3, my current struggle is great ideas, great characters, but figuring out what I have to put down on paper, qualitative or not. Is it derivative? Is it evocative? Is it a part of dumb that could be written better? I have this annoying start and stop writing, trying to find that best starting place. That is a difficult one. We've had a few people ask questions like that actually on the stream. My advice is always the same, is just write the damn thing. Get to the end of a draft, because it's very difficult. I mean, I don't want to use a cliche like, seeing the wood for the trees and all that. You know what I mean? Is until you've got a draft, you really aren't in a position to determine whether or not you've got something good or not. I think you've got to get to, a completed something. And first draft is obviously going to be rough and a bit rushed, but. You've got to get to the end of it to work out whether or not the thing that you've created is actually a work of art or not. And I wouldn't worry about being too derivative, because it's really hard not to be derivative, even unconsciously. I've noted this in a few things that I've written over the years, and I've occasionally come back to them and gone, this seems strange. And I've been watching something on television from my childhood, and I've suddenly realised that I have subconsciously echoed a thing that I've seen as a child in my adult writing. So and that I don't think that's avoidable. I think there's so many things that seep into your psyche and your consciousness and your unconsciousness sometimes, and what we write comes out of our imagination and our soul and our feelings and all those other things. And I think sometimes it all gets sort of slurped up and mixed together. So I wouldn't worry, about being too derivative. A, because I think it's probably unavoidable to a degree. And B, lots of people like derivative stuff, so it's not an issue. So there we go. Rob's 2016 Milk's Minority Report with reviews. Yeah, precognitive review. I've already decided what review I'm going to give you. I haven't read your book yet, but I will. I will read your book. Drew, I gave you 4 stars for Shayward because I preferred a glossary of terms at the start of the book. Just personal preference. Love the story and the writing. Oh, well, thanks very much, Rob. I do appreciate that. So yeah. Actually, that's a good point. Putting the glossary at the end makes sense in a printed book, but of course, it's not so helpful in a Kindle, is it? That's something I suppose. That's probably another stream at some point. Is the structural differences between ebooks and paperbacks. And the other problem you have there, of course, when you're converting to Audible, you can't really put an appendix in an Audible book. Yeah, that's right. You get to the end, and the author starts reading out the appendix. Well, that would be really boring, wouldn't it? So that doesn't really make sense either. So reading on the Kindle, it's hard. Yeah, you almost need an embedded, and you can do that, can't you? You can mark up. Because I've noticed on my Kindle, what am I currently reading? I'm reading one of Bill Bryson's books, and I don't know which one. I can't remember. Oh, a short history of nearly everything, I think, which has been on my reading list for a while. It's really good, actually. I like Bill Bryson. He's my kind of guy for non-fiction. And obviously you can click on some of the words in the Kindle, and it will go and look up what the word means. Now, I don't know off the top of my head if there's a way for somebody like me who's made up a bunch of words basically, and places and characters and things, to embed into the ebook. Actually, here's the definition of that word. So if you click on what the hell is a herg, you can click on it. It'll go, a herg is, and it basically is the appendix, but not so you can access it kind of dynamically. That sounds like the sort of thing that might be possible, which is a really good thing. I'm going to make a note of that. Go and investigate that offline. So that's an interesting suggestion, isn't it? Maybe there are sort of structural ways you can improve the ebook experience compared to the paperback. Because I tend to still write in my head for paperback because that's what I'm used to. That's what I started with. And ebooks are kind of a little bit new kid on the block sort of stuff. And then audiobooks are a whole different thing as well, which I've been getting to grips with. So interesting stuff. Rune, I aspire to the feeling of old Robert E. Howard work, but I also don't want to replicate the work of better authors. Well, I mean, again, believe in yourself. Write the best piece of writing advice I was ever given is write the book that you want to read. Now, if that is a mashup of this, that, and the other, that's okay. That's okay, because if it's the book you want to read, you will put your heart and soul into it and make it a thing. And I don't think necessarily derivative stuff is all that bad. I mean, in science fiction and fantasy, how difficult is it to come up with a really original concept today? Really, really difficult, because, and I've done it. I mean, I wrote, my latest, series that I finished last year, Shadewood. I didn't consciously echo a certain recent well-known film with sandworms and stuff in it at all. But there are striking similarities between the priestesses in my series and the Bene Gesserit ladies from that certain sci-fi movie, which is entirely coincidental. It's just I've come up with a similar idea independently. And I hadn't realised until I watched it. I thought, damn! And another time I've had the same thing happen. I wrote a scene in another book where a whole bunch of people go to a wedding and get killed. And I hadn't seen nor read the red wedding scene from Game of Thrones at the point I wrote that scene. Put it in my book, was quite happy with it, sent it off to the editor. Editor didn't comment on it, went through the publishing, the book came out, and then I watched the Game of Thrones thing with the red wedding. I thought, my God, everyone's going to assume I've just pitched it. And I genuinely hadn't. Just came up independently with the same idea. So that's it's not a problem, I don't think, to be derivative. I mean, sometimes you can be accidentally derivative. So what can you do? What can you do? Commander Lenslark, subscribe for 6 months. Oh, thank you very much for the subscription there, Commander Lenslark, much appreciated. Tipping my hat, indeed. Thank you very much for that. So footnotes can be fun. I might have a play with that actually. And Dune is a sci-fi book first. Yeah, there we go. So Sean says, not sure the world is quite ready for what I want to read. Is there a certificate beyond X-rated? I don't know. So there's weird and wonderful things. So Chris, fantasy project I'm working on is something that I think is probably not super original as such, and there are many things that I'm inspired by, but it's kind of something I want to read and I want to make it my own thing, and that's healthy. I think that's absolutely okay. And I would encourage you to just keep going with it at your own pace, in your own time. Write the story you want to read, because if you, let's say, like I don't know, let's say you like the Lord of the Rings. Let's take an easy example. You like Lord of the Rings, but you like a bit more romance in it, okay? That's okay. Write yourself a epic quest hero storyline with a bit of romance in it. If you like, grungy, dark sci-fi like Battlestar Galactica, but you want some weird metaphysical magic in it, go do it, okay? It's fine. If you like Game of Thrones, but you want some tanks... That's fine too. Just go do it, because there'll be somebody out there who goes, this is exactly the book I've been waiting for, and I'm glad you wrote it. You just got to find them. So, that's okay. That's kind of okay. So there we go. Dune is a hell of a sci-fi book first. Yeah, so I mean, we've had the debate about whether you should watch the movie first or the film first. And I think the answer we came up with, usually the book, but it depends. But there we go. Ghost Speed recently wrote a short story where people clung to an aircraft and fell off, and then it happened for real in Afghanistan. I mean, that's a bit weird, isn't it? I had a similar thing actually. I wrote a story. My first book actually, I wrote a story about this young woman, and she had and I did all the research actually. She had this brain aneurysm, which I'd never heard of before. I was thinking I need a reason for her to have a car accident that's not caused by another driver. And I thought, well, she could pass out driving, but that seems a bit odd. So I thought, are there any medical situations where, somebody can be incapacitated really quickly while driving a car that would have gone undetected up until this point unless... Anyway, so it turns out there is, and it was a brain aneurysm, which is basically like a weak blood vessel in your head, which bursts under stress or high blood pressure, and you basically just pass out. So I did the research. I went and did some medical stuff, and it turns out my uncle is actually a doctor, so I could check a few things with him. And he said, "Oh yeah, that stuff happens all the time. Not often, but it's a thing that doctors see, and they can be quite nasty. So you want to get it seen to if you have a weakness for this." And so, brilliant. Okay, so lady driving down the road has a brain aneurysm, passes out, crashes a car, has to get to hospital. Resolution of a story, and then I wrote this into my book, and then was horrified to discover about 2 months later, newspaper article, and this was the spooky part here, was on the same road that I'd written about. A young lady had a brain aneurysm when driving, crashed her car, was rushed to hospital using the air ambulance system that I had described. And fortunately she recovered, she was fine, but it was like maybe I'm just going to step away from the keyboard for a bit. It's very odd. Just, I mean, coincidences happen, but just it does freak you out a little bit. Brain aneurysms happen all the time. No, that's not what I meant, sorry. They do, but not not from a statistically likely perspective. So it's a bit weird, isn't it? So be careful what you write. So that's quite good. But yeah, and the other nice thing about obviously all these streams and these community things that we can all do is supporting each other's work. So actually on this stream we've got a few authors who've gone through the process of writing stuff and putting things together and getting it critiqued and getting it published and all that kind of good stuff. So it's good. Yeah, we can expand and celebrate each other's work, which is important as well. So that's good. So there we go. So that was a reasonable waffle. Yeah, we've got 24 minutes waffle out of Alan's 1-star review. Dru's writing his novels in a Death Note. Yeah, that's right. This will happen. So yeah, unfortunately, my last set of novels was a kind of sort of fantasy stroke sci-fi series, which was fairly unlikely to occur on the Earth. I think, if we suddenly had major solar flares destroying life on Earth, somebody else would have noticed that. So I think I've been safe on that one. Tom Clancy must have been mortified when you wrote about someone flying a 747 into the US Capitol. I know, scary sort of stuff that is, because I mean it was fantasy, wasn't it? I remember the reactions to the 9/11 thing just being, am I watching a movie? What's going on here? So there's sometimes real life can catch up and overtake, which is weird. So anyway. So anyway, congratulations, Alan, on your 1-star review. I think you should be extremely proud. So well done. It is a rite of passion, and actually dealing with, we've talked a little bit about mental health on this stream before for authors, because we are fragile egos covered in skin, us authors, it's not all that difficult to puncture that skin sometimes, and we do like to talk about ourselves, and we do like to get a bit of praise from reviews and all that kind of stuff. And it's important for us to feel like we've accomplished something, and it was all the struggle into writing and everything else is worth doing. There's nothing worse than having your sort of book drop into obscurity, almost straight away after you've written it. So that's important. But if you get a bad review, it can be very hard work, because you've spent, I don't know, depends how long you spent, but let's say you've taken a year, which is a reasonable amount of time, a sensible amount of time to create a book from start to end, you've spent you put your heart and soul into it, and blah 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 blah, and then somebody has bought it, which is obviously a good thing, and then and somebody basically gives you a 1-star review and says, no, this book was absolute rubbish, I hated it, poorly written, blah 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 blah, and you're kind of going, ooh. And it can be very hard to deal with that. What you mustn't do, you mustn't respond. Okay, there is that tendency. I think particularly, I don't know if Goodreads does it. I haven't looked at Goodreads for a while. But Amazon certainly has reply, or this review is helpful buttons, or things like that. What you must never do is you must never engage. Okay, it's definitely bad form to an author to respond to negative reviews. You've just got to roll with it. Okay, and trust that the overall average of reviews does eventually give a fair and reasonable telling of thing. There's not much you can do about it. It's one of those gauntlets you've got to run as an author, is that you're putting yourself in the public firing line, and some people will take pot shots at you, and some they can. There are problems actually. I think there's some. I haven't encountered this myself, but I've heard a few people who have been hit by this. Is that they'll put 1-star reviews on your work and then extort you for money to remove it. It's like, give me 10 quid and I'll take off my 1-star review. It's like, really? So hopefully Goodreads and Amazon are cranking down on stuff like that. But it is a bit of a minefield, and I don't know. I mean, certainly the received wisdom was a few years ago that reviews were desperately important to gain new readers, and to get your book visible out there. But I'm not so sure people trust reviews as much anymore, because there are now so many fake reviews. You don't know what to believe, do you? So it's still a bit of a minefield, both for readers and for authors, to say, well, how do I get my book out there and get it reasonably reviewed, and make people aware of it. It's a tough one. My personal approach has been slowly over the years to just sort of build my readership up book by book, and then hope that I can continue to write books that people like. But it's not easy. It's not easy at all. So there we go. First time chat from viewer Lou Hodo. My first was Red Storm Rising. So yeah. So some good stories coming through there. Goodreads does have comments, does it? Okay. So that's good. Reply from the author. You're absolutely right. Your 1-star review is absolutely on point. Yeah. I don't think we'd ever say that. So we've hijacked Dru's sci-fi fantasy stream with espionage for a crime thriller. Never mind. Review extortion seems like a good setup for a crime thriller. So maybe we could take it back. This book is inspired by all the extortionists out there. So yeah, it's quite strange. So it's a gauntlet you do have to, seriously, it's a gauntlet you do have to run with reviews. And sometimes you read a review. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to get quite a lot of positive reviews for quite a lot of my work, and you do get a kind of like, yeah, it's a bit like my book, and yeah, they really got the characters, and yeah, that's nice. It's a really positive, affirming thing. But you do get some odd reviews sometimes. And I've talked to them about people are basically saying, the way you juxtapose the battle of the XYZ in your book versus the real battle in the South African Republic of XYZ. You're kind of thinking, did I? People draw some quite startling conclusions sometimes. So I've had reviews where those show up, and I'm like, okay. I have no idea what you're talking about, and I get emails sometimes because I do have an email on the web which allows people to get into contact with me. And you do get occasionally, you get some nice fan email at times, but you do get some wacky stuff as well, which is a bit weird. And then you get some people who really, I mean, the most common ones I've got actually concern the most, and this is interesting actually, and I don't know if this is a demographic thing or whether it's just not what people weren't expecting. Is most of the 1-star reviews I have got have been down to what the reviewer claims to be political correctness. So for example, Lords of Midnight was one of my relatively recent books, about 3 years ago now, and when we were writing Lords of Midnight, we took a look at, because for those of you who know this is a computer game from 1984 where there's a bunch of heroic characters. It's very Lords of Rings-y, okay, but basically, the game. Probably because the original author of the game didn't really think about it, is just a bunch of blokes basically having a fight. That's essentially what the game is. There's a big evil baddie overlord, a bunch of goodies, and another bunch of goodies who have to kind of get together and defeat the evil baddie. Okay, but basically a load of blokes. They're all called the Lord of something. Okay, and that's basically how the game works. Now, in the sequel game, there are 2 female characters. Okay. So we felt quite justified when we were writing the novelisation of the first game to say, well, hang on a minute, you can't just introduce 2 female characters from nowhere in the second book. We're going to have to introduce them somehow in the first book and give them a role, because otherwise they just materialise in the story with no preamble at all. What were they doing in the previous conflict? They must have been doing something. So we kind of head scratched that and thought, okay, well, we're going to introduce these 2 female characters. They're canon. They're from the second book, or the second game, into the first game, in minor roles, just so that the readers are aware that they exist and they're doing something, okay? And so we introduced them. And I got most of my 1-star reviews are concerning, but putting female characters in this game is outrageous. It would never be allowed. It's like, what? Pardon? It's political correctness gone bad. It's like, no, it's not. It's a narrative choice, because you can't argue with 1-star reviews. You just can't. You can in your head, but you can't. So very, very strange, very strange. But an awful lot of people, most of my critical reviews are perceived political correctness on the part of the reader being upset by the fact that I appear to have pandered to some political woke agenda. Which I haven't, as far as I'm aware, getting very upset about it. Therefore, 1-star review. I was going to give this book a 5-star review, but I've given it a 1-star review because I'm very upset that Dru's introduced a female character into my entirely male story, despite the fact the female character is in the lore and Moore's doing something at this point in the story timeline. But that's irrelevant. I don't know. So there we go. Very strange. Rob says, why send you fan mail when I can interact with you and mock you on here? Well, absolutely right. That's exactly what this stream is for. And you introduced Tarothel nicely, Drew, veteran of the War of the Solstice. Well, we were looking at, because Tarothel, for those of you who don't know, I'm off topic a little bit here now with Lords of Midnight and Doomdark's Revenge, but Doomdark's Revenge is a lot about Tarothel. She's kind of one of the main protagonists of the story, and she's a young woman of probably just down to teenage, early 20s kind of age, and the previous story takes place the previous year, so she's obviously alive, okay. and doing something in that time period. So you can't just say, oh, yeah, suddenly we're going to introduce this woman who's really important to the story, who has no backstory at all. That's not acceptable from a narrative context. You can do that when you're writing a computer game. But you can't do it in a book. It just doesn't work. So a man monk has read books, introduced characters, but you can't. The character has to have gone somewhere and come from somewhere. I think that's the important point here. And we thought it would be more fun for players to see, or readers rather in this case, to see what that character was doing before the events that made them famous, if that makes sense. So there we go. Obviously written by Wagar. I mean, the ironic thing is, being a sort of 50-plus middle-aged white bloke, I'm not exactly the target demographic for being woke, am I? If anything, people would normally accuse me of the other way around. Oh, he's bloody conservative, white middle-aged, middle-class chap, so what can I do? I can't win. Dear, never mind. So what is this off topic you speak of? No, we should head generally in a vague direction of the topic for this evening, which is, the topic of this evening is things that annoy you. Would you come across quite a bit? Now, I was watching, and this applies to TV and books, okay? Now, for those of you who don't know, my actual, dare I say, professional career, which isn't really, but I could possibly call it as professional. My background training and what I do outside of my writing is as I dare I say it, I'm an expert in information security. Okay, I have some letters after my name and all sorts of stuff, right? So that's been my career alongside writing for many years, and I still practice and still do some consultancy around information security. Okay, so that's and in a nutshell, that is the business of keeping information secure, whether it's printed or whether it's digital or da. Okay, so I know a bit about that subject domain. All right. That's just what I do. That's what I'm trained in. I've spent 20, actually no more than that, 30 years now, as a practitioner in a particular domain of expertise. Okay, which is no different from many other people who might be excellent plumbers or doctors or lawyers or electricians or whatever. Okay, there's an awful lot of people who have an awful lot of skill in a particular area because that's what they do. All right, but of course, what can then happen? And frequently does, is particularly when you read a book. Now I was watching, and this is a particular irritant of mine, is when the quite often, and particularly in crime novels or TV shows or procedural kind of cop thrillers, that sort of stuff. Okay, is when the either the bad guy or the good guy, it depends, it doesn't really matter actually in this particular example, gets in, and then there's the computer. Okay, it's the plot device, what's coming, and the computer is locked, okay, behind some sort of access screen, which is never Windows. Have you noticed that? Despite the fact that Microsoft Windows is like 90% of the entire world, it's never ever Windows. They never ever, nobody in films ever seems to use Windows. I think it's either Microsoft's missing a trick or something. But anyway, it's usually, if it's a sort of, if it's kind of all bright and modern and shiny, it'll always be an Apple Mac. Okay, they've got their product placement really good, so it'll be an Apple machine, or it's some sort of wacky, nondescript sort of high-tech looking operating system which isn't Windows or Apple, but it maybe is a bit Linuxy, but it's kind of, I don't know what it is. It's not anything recognisable. To people who actually know about operating systems, it isn't one of those. Okay, so it's really, really weird. So there's that bit. Okay, so you kind of like, okay, what the hell operating system is that? As part of your brain is already ticking away. But the cardinal sin is when they go, they type in the password and they go enter, and it comes up. In the olden days, it used to just go, yep, let you in straight away. It's like, I know what the password is. He likes dogs, so his password's going to be Labrador. I'm in. It's like, what? That's not how passwords work. Or they look around the room and go, yes, well, he's got a painting. He's got a painting of the Eiffel Tower, and I can see his two daughters there. One of them is called Guinevere, so it's Eiffel Guinevere 3. Boom, I'm in. No, well, password security isn't that great, but you're kind of looking at things. No, you can't guess passwords like that. And the other one is that they're typing in, they get the first password wrong, they get the next password wrong, they get the next password wrong, and they keep going until they get the password right. And it's like any sensible operating system of any recent type. Basically, if you try and type in your password and get it wrong 3 times, it locks you out for 10 minutes, right? Because it knows you're trying to hack it. It's not that stupid. And so that to me is a bugbear. It's like, oh no, not the old I'm the super duper hacker. I can guess passwords by the power of my mind. That's just not realistic at all. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, you're in. Which is probably more common than you think. But there we go. So that's a bit weird. Okay, so all computers run Movios, yeah. And the other, okay, so you pass the password because that's the easy bit. And then what the next thing is, okay, so Movie OS computers run some sort of weird graphical environment where no matter whether you're using the mouse or the keyboard, the windows pop up and move around and resize on their own in some kind of weird, cool looking way. Okay, and there's always a terminal in the background, isn't there, with some text scrolling up, which looks hyper technical. But when you look at it, it's kind of like, well, that's just JavaScript. Why is it showing loads of nodes of JavaScript in green text on the black background? Slightly because it looks cool. And to all the people who actually know how computers work, you look at this, go, this is just stupid. What's it doing? Is it compiling something? Why would a desktop PC be compiling some source code? It doesn't make any sense at all. So that's irritating. And the most irritating thing is the noises. Okay, so in the movies, there's always some sort of open plan office. Okay, open plan office, but every time they open a window, the window pops up on the screen. The computer makes a sort of noise. So it's going, right, just refactor the condition. It's like, computers don't make noises. Imagine that in an open plan office. If you were trying to do some actual work and the computers all around you were going, it'd drive you insane, like within minutes. So there is that. Okay, so that's one particular example that really irritates me as a security professional, I suppose. The other one is just general security in buildings. I mean, I was watching things saying, well, hang on, the front desk security. The guards have let the guy walk in through the door, and they haven't challenged him. They let him stroll up to the desk when he then goes and shoots them. It's like, what kind of security guys are you? The people aren't that dumb in real life. I do like how the naughty person always has Operation Mass Murder, etc. The folder names are like Top Secret Plans. Must be that one. Click, click. Spaceballs, the combination is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That same sort of thing an idiot puts on his luggage. Exactly right. And they can put they can put a USB stick into the computer, and then it's always drag and drop, isn't it? They drag and drop all of the files to the USB stick, and it's you see the temperature bar thing go across, and they immediately put the USB stick out. It's just like USB 5 or something that hasn't been invented yet. You've just copied gigabytes of information onto a USB stick in like 10 seconds. And there's always a button or some keystroke combination that the good guy can press, so that when he's challenged, he just goes, I don't know, it's like Alt R or something, and the screen goes back to however it was where the person had left it alone. So there's no evidence that anything had been tampered with. They're just sort of casually looking by the window, or they've already snuck out the room by this point. So there's no evidence their computer's actually been hacked. Oh dear. Why is this virus written in CSS? And there's all sorts of stuff that's really, really weird. So that's annoying. And I think, from a writing perspective, it's a case of again, depending on the kind of book that you're trying to write, okay, if it's a book that you're wanting people to take reasonably seriously, then get your details right, okay. Don't make your computers do things that they can't do. It's the same with guns, and it's the same with horses, and it's the same with all sorts of other elements. I've talked about magic horses before in fantasy films. So many fantasy books treat a horse like a car. Okay, you get on your horse at the beginning of the day and you ride it all the way through the day. And at the end of the day, you tie up your horse and you pat it and you say goodnight. That is not how horses work. Okay, horses are animals. Okay, they don't recharge. You can't fill up the gas tank on a horse like you do in a car. Okay, your horse can do about 20 miles, and that's it for the day. Okay, it's not going to go. It doesn't matter what you try and do to your horse. He's not going to go any further. All right. So you can't have magic horses. If you want to go further, you're going to have to get another horse. And you can only ride your horse for a certain length of time before you can have all sorts of other problems with your horse in reality. So many fantasy films have magic horses in them that never get tired and never get worn out. That's an issue. Do I pat my car at the end of the day? Good car, you've done good. So that's the thing. Guns as well. I mean, we've seen infinite ammo in many films, and books aren't usually so bad. But if your protagonist is shooting at somebody, make sure you research the capabilities of the weapon that he's using in the scenario that he's using it in. Don't get some old Western firearm and expect it to be accurate at 200 yards. It just isn't going to work. Whereas if you've got a sniper rifle, you're okay. There's all sorts of bits and pieces in there that can influence the. So bad computers are definitely a thing. Magic horses are definitely a thing. The other things that always wind me up in fantasy films is the way that archers always have infinite arrows. It's like you can run out of stuff. It's okay to run out of stuff, and that's actually quite a good tension as you go for your last. I haven't got an arrow. So those sort of things. I don't want to think of the surprise the horse will get when he refuels at the petrol. Yes, you can't refuel a horse. It just doesn't work like that. Okay. So you get a lot of people. The horses. Horses will ride all day and then they'll go into battle at the end of the day. Horse isn't up for that. Trust me. Particularly if it's covered in armour, okay, and then that's another thing in fantasy novels. Is you've got your knight in armour. Well, you don't want to walk around like that for too long, okay. You can't be wearing full plate armour and just stroll about all afternoon. That's not how it works. If people are travelling on planes in those films, there's often no noise. Yeah, so you can have a conversation at a really low level. So that's a bit weird. There's lots of things like that. And I was going back to the earlier story I was talking about, the girl with the brain aneurysm. I thought I need this to be plausible. Okay, I need it to be plausible. This, for me, and this may not apply to you, it's entirely whether or not you think it's important, but part of my research is thinking, okay, if I want to have someone have an accident, there's got to be a plausible reason why they have an accident. So then I'll go and try and seek out a plausible reason why somebody would pass out. Why do people pass out? So you do a bit of research, and it could be low blood pressure, okay? And you go through all the kind of list of things. And I stumbled across this brain aneurysm thing, and I thought, well, that's actually quite good, because this, the symptoms of having a brain aneurysm are that you would get kind of migraine-style headaches every so often in advance of it going really badly wrong, which would kind of hopefully prompt you to go to a doctor and get yourself checked out. Now, I use that in the narrative here. The girl wanted to go to the doctors and get her checked out, but her parents basically said, no, don't be silly. There's nothing wrong with you. Get off your backside and go into work. At which point she has the accident. So then you can kind of roll in the kind of grief and we should have known and we were stupid, all that sort of emotional context into the story as well, if you wish to, and play it around the actual real facts of a thing. Drew speaks as one who's ridden a horse into battle. No, I have ridden a horse. I have not ridden into battle. That's why police banda cars in car chases are capable of keeping up. Yeah, I always find that really funny when you've got like some amazing supercar, I don't know, some McLaren or Lamborghini or Ferrari or something. It's really cheap Fiat Multiplas keeping up down the bypasses. With the bad guys shooting out the window. It's like, no. The stuff is heavy, and I mean, yes, people are big and strong and various stuff, but there are limitations to what you can and can't do, which it's worth you researching. Okay, it's worth you researching to make sure that what you're doing is a plausible thing. So, the old, who remembers the old CSI Miami stuff where they can zoom and enhance, okay? That just winds me up so much, because you can't zoom and enhance. It doesn't work like that. You can't take a single image. I mean, you can do some processing with it. Yes, you can. But you can't extract more information than was actually in the original image in that sense, unless you've got lots of other similar images that you can kind of overlay and interpolate and do some clever maths with. So you certainly can't... you can't expose your monitor to infrared light and then read a fingerprint off an image that's not got the visible artifact on the screen. It's kind of like nutty madness. Or you can actually, I can see a reflection of the killer in the guy's eye. Let's zoom and enhance. It's like, that's right, enhance image. There we've got the number plate. You go like, no, that's just a cop out. There's got to be a better way. So all that sort of stuff. To be fair, the police interceptors patrolling the A13 in Essex are beasts. Okay, that sounds quite fun. That sounds like a challenge. And TV and film also fail to recognise how long some of this stuff takes. Days and weeks of work are reduced to minutes or seconds. Yeah, so now there is obviously dramatic emphasis, and it is a good writer knows how to keep the emphasis and on the action. You don't want the fact that actually we need to decrypt this hard drive in the next hour, or the end of the world is going to happen. Well, actually, AES 256-bit encryption can't be cracked within 2 hours because there isn't enough computing power in the world to do it. It's like, yes, okay, right, okay, realism may be too far, but you need to have some plausibility in there. Getting DNA tests in a few hours and all that sort of thing. That's right, enhance more. There's the reflection of the burp in the head of a screw, That's just lazy writing. Okay, that's just lazy writing. Find a smarter way to do it. Okay, it's ideally it's something that doesn't involve technology. There's also things like what mobile phones can do. Have you Have you noticed that mobile phones can do anything nowadays? It's quite amazing. And they've all, for some strange reason, they've all got their GPS trackers always switched on, and they're always hackable. We can just hack in and find out his GPS coordinates from his phone. No, you can't. If the location services and the Wi-Fi mechanisms are switched off, the best you can do is a ping from a cell tower, which will give you an approximate location. If you can get some triangulation, but it isn't GPS. That's not GPS. That's something entirely different. So all that, all that sort of stuff, which I always find. Oh yeah, we've got a GPS track on his mobile phone. No, you haven't. You do know you're ripping my profession to bits. Sorry, Sean. So we're plausibility. We have a certain amount of suspension of disbelief. I did notice, I was chuckling actually. I don't know how many of you have seen the recent Fast and Furious film. Now, Fast and Furious film is not a paragon of virtue in it, as we know. With the infinite shifting gearbox with about 17 gears that they can go up and down through, depending on wherever they are. It's not a paragon of virtue. But I did chuckle. There's a scene somewhere in the last film where. I don't know who the characters are. I don't know it very well, but one of the women basically says, "Yeah, we'll just hack into the root console, pop up a command shell, RDP straight across using UDP, and we'll gain access that way." And the funny thing was, I was listening to this thinking, well, that's rubbish, that's rubbish, that's rubbish, that's rubbish. But all the abbreviations, all the technical words were actually real. So it's like, let's take a bunch of technical sounding stuff which actually does exist, chuck it into dialogue and hope nobody notices. So that's the way some of the movies do it. And I mean, who am I to argue with the success of Fast and Furious 9? But it depends on your writing craft. I feel is how much respect are you paying to your readers, and how much and what kind of people are your readers? Okay, your wife must love watching a film with you. No, she hates it actually. Because she'll look at when a technical thing happens in the film, and it's usually something to do with space or spaceships or physics or computers. Naturally, she'll just look at me. She'll just put her finger out and go, and that's all that has to be. In fact, nothing is said. That all that has to be indicated. It's like, nope, no, that can't happen. She'll just sort of see me going, and she'll just doesn't have to say that. That's what happens after 30 years of marriage. That's I suppose that's more in contemporary stuff. Okay. Now it can apply in fantasy and science fiction, which is obviously mostly what the stream is about. Now in fantasy, it tends to, it's hard to basically say, well, that can't happen because, I mean, magic, right? Magic can fix everything, but it depends on the type of fantasy you're writing. Magic horses do annoy me. Huge, great big armies that are camped around things for a long period of time without any obvious supply chain kind of make me have a scratch in my head. So, where are these guys getting their food from? How are they still alive after like 3 weeks of camping around the Tower of Doom with no supply chain? So there are little things like that. If you want to conduct a proper piece of warfare, you need to have a supply line keeping you going. So that's something. Certain swords in the wrong time period winds me up in some historical fantasy movies, like 17th century swords turning up in the 10th century. Might as well introduce machine guns. Like, yes, right. Yeah, I've got an iron sword. You've only got a bronze sword. So tech jargon. How do the inertia dampeners work? Well, we'll get onto science fiction because in science fiction it's like, well, it's the future, right? Maybe the guy's got like some super duper high tech thing, and any technology that's like way in advance of something else should be able to deal with any security issues that older piece of technology had. That does sort of make sense, so that's quite good. Do you really think they're going to reveal genuine hacking techniques in films? Yeah. I suppose that's I suppose that's a fair consideration. Is no, an actual real hacking is quite dull. It's just a guy sitting in front of a command prompt, typing, fairly boring looking code commands, and then getting some some numeric numbers back in kind of base 64 encoding and things like that. Doesn't look very exciting. Compared to how the movies make it look, where the urgent music is playing and the temperature bar is counting down and the access denied thing keeps flashing up on the screen. That's not what it looks like. Trust me. So that is the thing. So in fantasy novels, again, depending on your audience, because readers can be, not all the time, but can be very discerning. Okay. And I was aware of this when I'm writing. So when in Shadewood, for example, my last science fiction series I set out at the beginning to say I am not going to break the laws of physics. Okay, I'm not going to break the laws of physics. That was a commitment to myself as I was writing the story, and kind of to my readers. I wanted to be able to say, okay, I can guarantee you in this story the laws of physics aren't going to be broken. So if you see something weird going on in the story, and you're going, hang on a minute, what the hell's going on here? Then you're going to have the opportunity to figure it out using your own mental, thought process and try and figure out what I'm doing. So I'm not going to just, it's magic, or actually it's hand wavium and the teleporter comptronic device will take care of that particular anomaly. I wasn't going to cop out like that. So when you're reading that thing, you can go, actually, no, that can't be the answer because Dru said the laws of physics are being obeyed. And that was important to me in writing that story. And I wanted people to think about, okay, how are these people doing that if the laws of physics have to be obeyed? That was important to me. And I felt like I was treating the readers with a bit more, okay, the people I'm hoping are reading my books are smart, intelligent people who probably know quite a lot about physics, astrophysics, maths, geometry, all of those things. Okay, I'm aiming for, dare I say it, an educated clientele. I'm not a mass market, kind of yay boom kind of storyteller. That's not my style of writing. I don't mind a bit of that in the context of the story, but the idea being that if you're a smart person, you'll be going, what about the I see, he's joined that up to there, and you're figuring it out as you go along. That's the sort of writing that I try and create. And I want to drop clues into the story to make sure that you've got things you can go, hang on a minute, that happened and that happened. So maybe it's or it could be one of the, your brain is hopefully trying to do those kind of things. So all that sort of stuff. So a general once said, amateurs think about tactics, professional thinks logistics. Well, yeah. Exactly, yeah. Where's my next meal coming from? That's part of why I love The Deed of Park by Elizabeth Moon. The main character works as a mercenary for roughly the first half or third of the trilogy. She's taught about logistics as part of her training to be a mercenary. She literally has to do calculations about how many barrels of apples they need. So that stuff lends credibility to your story. Rune Knight, I really hate how the function of weapons is ignored for perceived aesthetics. Yes, an axe chopping of a head is brutal, but that doesn't make lancing vitals with a rapier and making someone drown as their lungs fill with blood somehow nice. That's just horrible, isn't it? We even romanticize swords when the superior battlefield weapon is the polearm. Swords are a sidearm. Yeah, so if you fights, just in general fights. I mean, I actually studied Aikido for many years, so I could get, and one of the things we did in our Aikido classes, we did study knife fights, okay, and how to defend yourself in a knife fight. Not in a sense that I was deliberately planning to get myself into a knife fight, because that would be really, really stupid. But to study the dynamics of a fight, okay. And what's absolutely fascinating, or I found fascinating from a writer's perspective, having learned how to handle an attacker coming at me with a knife, or two attackers actually, and in one case, in order to get the highest grade qualification, I had to it's kind of a role play, but it's kind of serious role play, but not obviously with real knives. You have squashable knives, but basically if you get stabbed, you failed. So you've got three people who are attempting to stab you with pretend knives, and if one of them lands a stab on you, you haven't passed the grading. That's how it works. So you have to deal with first at the lower grades 1 attacker, then 2 attackers, then 3, and 3 is the most I ever got to. And I got killed lots of times, right? Because oh, didn't see that. So, but you get better at it. It's interesting how your brain goes, aha, yeah, I'm now beginning to predict where people are and what they're going to do. And Aikido is all about balance change and and avoiding things and channeling inertia and all that kind of stuff. So it's actually quite clever because it actually uses physics to deal with your attackers. What was interesting about the situation is you kind of, in the movies and in books, then you have the protagonist, they wield their knife and they threaten you with a knife, and there's a bit of dialogue and I'm going to gut you and right, come on then, let's have a fight. And they dance around and they stab at each other, and then there's maybe, oh, you cut my cloak, you rotter, all that sort of stuff, and they spin around and they wrestle and they're trying to push their knives in like this, all that sort of stuff. And then they jump back, and then they jump forward again, and they jump back, and they jump forward again, they spar around each other, all that sort of stuff. That's not how fights are, okay? Fights aren't anything like that at all. Real fights, if you've ever seen a real fight, and actually I have, and it's not very nice, are fast, brutal, and they're over really, really quickly. Somebody wins really fast, okay? Usually the other person runs away, or they do get beaten and they lose, okay? And it's usually within a few seconds. Okay, that's how fast the fight is. It just there's none of this dancing around trading blows, okay? And there certainly isn't time for witty dialogue, okay? Aha, you rotter! Take that. That's not how fights happen. Okay, fights are over really fast. And I use this because I experience this in my practice sessions as well as various other things. Is how quickly you can be dead. Okay, if you make a mistake. So here's my first piece of advice to you: is if anybody does ever come after you with a knife, right, your best chance is to run. Okay, don't hesitate. Don't think that yes, I can get with this, because you can't. Okay, if somebody's got a knife, your best chance to stay alive unhurt is to run. Okay, so there's my first piece of advice. This has got nothing to do with writing. This is just general survival tips. Run away. All right. Don't even if you know some martial arts or anything else, don't try. It's incredibly risky. Your best opportunity not to be hurt is to run away. But if you are caught, you can tell a lot about the way somebody, whether they know what they're doing with the knife by the way they're holding it. The amateur kind of way to hold a knife is actually to hold it out as if you were holding a bread knife, with kind of pointing at the camera, pointing at the camera like that. I haven't got a knife up here, oddly enough. With the blade sort of pointed down and the point sort of towards you, and you're kind of holding it like that. That's the amateur way of holding a knife. If somebody really knows what they're doing with a knife, what they'll actually do is they'll hold it hilt down this way with the blunt side of the knife against towards their skin, with the blade on the outside, so they can actually slash at you with no danger of causing any damage to you at all. That's actually how a professional knife assassin would do things. So these are the things you pick up. But run away. Okay, if anyone's coming at you with a knife, for God's sake, run away. Unless you are like a triple eighth dan double ninja or something. But things like that are interesting. Now, I only did it because I thought, I want to write some fight scenes in various books, and I want to do them properly. I don't want to just kind of chuck some knives at each other and all that sort of stuff and have a thing. I wanted to kind of get it realistic. So there's a scene, and quite a few people have commented on it actually in my Shadewood book. I think it's in book 3. Where one of my heroes, or heroine should I say, a young lady called Kiri, who is actually quite a nasty piece of work actually in some ways, is challenged to a knife fight by this guy, and she accepts it because she's that kind of person. And rather than a 3-page knife fight exchange, it's basically a paragraph. She trips him up, overbalances him. He falls over, stumbles past her. She basically stabs him. That's it. Game over. Stab to the heart. He's dead. And that's it. That's what it's like. Okay. So getting details like that right, depending on your audience and who you're writing for, I'm hopeful that the audience for my books is quite discerning. They would expect me to spend time on the details like that, like the weapons, like the environment, like the physics, like the astronomy, like the weather, like the all the other aspects that go into the world building. Because for me, that's really important, to make the world that their story exists in feel like it's a place that could actually be, rather than it's kind of, well, it's magic. So Brave Sir Robin was right. Yes, absolutely. Okay, a little bit of slight survival tips for you. Run away. In Sweden we say better to flee than fence poorly. It's roughly equivalent to your discretion is the better part of valor. Yeah, and it's a valid thing. Better a live coward than a dead hero. That's right. We don't need heroes. So knives, very dangerous. Okay. But getting those sort of details right is important to the. And so if you're writing a story, depending on your audience, but if you're writing a story, and a lot of readers do like to be treated with respect. Now it depends who you're writing for, but if you're writing for people who just want another kind of pow kapew splat, dying blah blah blah. Yeah, hero wins, gets the girl, kind of story, and it's the same thing over and over again. If that's what you do, and that's who your readers know you for, and that's what they like, that's fine. But if you're hoping to attract a readership which is, maybe degree or master's level kind of education, really knows a lot about physics or astronomy or mathematics, you can't take liberties with some of that stuff and still retain that audience, because they're just going to call you out on it. I had one error, and he let me down very gently. I found an error in the original print, and if you've got an original print of Shadewood 1, the error still exists in it. And I missed it. Completely. I mean, it wasn't because I just missed it. I made an error. Shadewood, for those of you who don't know, is set on a tidally locked planet. Okay, which means that the same face of the planet faces the star at all times. So, from the perspective of people on the surface, the sun doesn't move in the sky. For reasons which will become clear, I had some, there are some satellites, some artificial satellites in orbit around this planet. And of course, with my knowledge of how satellites work around the Earth, I thought, well, in order for the satellite to be taking useful pictures of the planet's surface, it must be in a geostationary orbit. That's what happens on the Earth, okay? Our planet spins round every 24 hours, so if you want your satellite to be taking a picture of a particular part of the planet and not vary, you put it in a geostationary orbit, okay, which on the Earth is several thousand kilometres up, and your satellite goes around the Earth every 24 hours, and the Earth rotates every 24 hours, so your satellite's always looking at the same spot on the Earth, which is extremely useful, for telecommunications and weather forecasting, all those kind of good things, okay? So I put a satellite in a geostation, and it's in the text. I put a satellite in a geostationary orbit around my planet, and I got an email several months later after I published the book from an astrophysicist saying, "I really enjoyed Shadewood, but there was an error in your in the astrophysics in your book." And I was like, what? An error in my astrophysics? What have I done wrong? Because I prided myself on all the attention to detail. He says you can't have a geostationary orbit around a tidally locked planet. He says it's not possible. And I was like, what? And he says, well, if you think about it, a geostationary orbit around a tidally locked world is the same as the orbit the tidally locked planet has around the star. So if you did have a satellite in a geostationary orbit around a tidally locked star, it would intercept the star at some point in the orbit, and that would probably be the end of the satellite. And I was like, yep, okay. Error. and so I had to I had to adjust it in subsequent versions to put the satellites at the Lagrange points of the planet's orbit around the star in order to satisfy the conditions that I wanted. So I made a mistake. I got it wrong. And there you go. Commander Lenslock. Geostationary isn't possible on a tidally locked planet. Exactly right. It isn't possible. You can't have a geostationary orbit on a tidally locked planet. There's no such concept. It only works on planets like the Earth, which are rotating at a relatively reasonable speed. So don't worry, Drew. In the first pointing Hitchhiker's Earth is said to be 98 million miles from the Sun, not 93. So people make mistakes, and that's okay. I tried my best and I got it wrong. Partly it's not moving and crash. Partly it'd be the orbit. You can put it in the orbit, but the orbit intersects where the Sun would be at one point in the orbit, which isn't very helpful for the satellite. And it would be so far away that it wouldn't be very useful because A, it wouldn't be able to get a decent image from that distance, and B, it hits the Sun. So that's bad. Okay. And actually, Glenn's quite right. You can't have a geostationary orbit at all around anything that isn't the Earth, because obviously geo is the Earth. So yes, I had to retcon. I did, yes, because I got it wrong. I had made an error. So fortunately, in the ebook, of course, you can update the text, and any subsequent printed-on-demand copies of Shadewood 1 will have that problem fixed. But the first editions, which of course will become immensely valuable in years to come, will have a geostationary satellite in orbit around Azurio, which is impossible and is wrong. So what can I say? I am fallible after all. Try as you might, you can't get everything right. But you can try, and what is nice for me there is that this astrophysicist, who to be fair was a PhD level astrophysicist, so he was somewhat more qualified than I was, corrected me in a nice way and suggested a solution as well. He said, well, you could put it at the Lagrange point. That would probably work okay for the purposes of your story. Thanks. I'll go and put it there then. So that was quite interesting. But the rest of it, I worked very hard to make sure that it was all possible, all plausible, and so on and so forth. So that's quite good. Rune Knight 3, I prefer physical media because it can't be updated. I fear for future bowdlerized works. So that's probably worth a stream of its own. That's a big question, isn't it? Should we update historical works because we today don't find them acceptable in the light of modern society versus when they were written? I don't know about that one. I really, there's part of me that kind of goes, yes, I understand the reasons why you would want to do that, and part of me that, for reasons I'm not quite able to articulate clearly at the moment, that just feels desperately uncomfortable with it. It's like you're rewriting history or something, because works of a period are products of their time, and is it okay for us to judge authors of 100, 200, 300 years ago on our standards? Are we going to be happy that our works today are revised by authors in 200 years time because we say something that's not acceptable to readership in 200 years time? I don't know. If somebody said to me, right, your works, Drew, will be majorly edited because in 200 years time they're going to find the use of tightly locked worlds offensive, I don't know why. That doesn't feel right, does it? I don't know. I kind of get it, but I kind of don't get it. And yes, certain works can be, and I can completely see why people get offended by them, because you certainly couldn't write something like some of these things today and get away with it, because standards have moved on. But these are historical documents now. So a book about Scott of the Antarctic gave the name of his dog as, obviously we know what the word is. The publisher wanted to change it even though it was historical fact. And, you mucking about with history because you find it offensive, it's a slippery slope. they pull your statue down. Yeah, there's going to be a statue of me, definitely. So, well, maybe we should have a look at that one, because that's. I mean, we're out of time on the stream today to actually dive into that. That's a mess. Let's pick that one up next week. Actually, we'll talk that one through in some depth. I think understanding the context of the work and understanding why it was written is really valuable, because that's a big thing. And interesting enough, as so many things go digital, being able to prove that the original thing actually is the original thing becomes increasingly more difficult, because now you can't fake a first copy of, I don't know, let's say Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, can you? You're getting topical for Christmas. You can't fake that, because because there are only certain number of them being made, and printed, and if you wanted to, you could carbon date the paper, to verify its authenticity. It's an ancient book, and there were only so many of them, so therefore a first edition copy of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol is a valuable thing. I myself have got a third edition. That's the best I could get, or the best I could afford, of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. Because A, I like the story, and B, it's Charles Dickens, and C, I just like the fact that it's a really old copy of the book. But it's a valuable thing because it's relatively rare and it's old. Whereas a digital thing is questionable as to is it old? Is it What is it? I think things like that are tough to how future historians are going to treat content, because how can you there are ways. I mean, you can do you can do hashes, and you can do bit chains and all sorts of things to verify modifications to digital stuff, but it's still not commonplace, and there's an awful lot of historical digital content which it hasn't been done to. Misanthrope Gaming says history should never be cleaned, ignored, rewritten. History is there to be learned from, and I think I tend to subscribe to that myself. I think I feel more comfortable with it, but I don't necessarily feel like I've considered all of the ramifications of that, because society today is taking a very critical look at history, and particularly recent history. I remember when I was a boy. And we're jumping into next week's topic now, but this is interesting. I remember when I was a boy, the whole kind of Victorian children are seen and not heard ethos was still quite strong. There were still people alive when I was a kid who had that drummed into them and still believed it to be perfectly valid parenting advice. Now, I don't think too many parents nowadays would share the view that children are to be seen and not heard. I think it's probably the other way around. But I remember that kind of vibe from being a child. So those kind of, and this is in the UK specifically. And I'm aware I've got an international audience for this stream as well. So it will vary by country. The sort of things that your society and your country thought 30, 40, 50 years ago, when, and depending on how old you know, I mean, total disclosure, I'm 51 right now, so I was born in 1970, so I'm, for absence of doubt, I'm Generation X. We're the strange generation that's caught between the boomers and the millennials, who nobody pays any attention to. And as I'm getting older, I'm getting more people going, "Oh, you're a boomer," and I said, "No, I'm not. I'm just an older Generation X." Not that membership of a particular era in history means anything particular, but okay. But there are perceptions of their various different things. Older people are probably going to tend to be more conservative, and younger people are going to tend to be less conservative. I think. So there's all sorts of things. Our view on the appropriateness of what was written in particular points of history is coloured by our own society here and now. I'm an old X-Man. 1970s was the best decade. 70s. I enjoyed the 80s more, I think, than the 70s. But there was some. Yeah, we had computers in the 80s, where the ones in the 70s were a bit rubbish. So I totally remember that stance, says 69. Yeah, my grandmother was a big believer in that. And certain things that I remember being told by my grandparents, which, as a child, you just say, well, they're old and in charge and wise and important and grown up, so that must be true, right? And it's not until much, much later in your life that you go, actually, that was bollocks. That was completely racist, or it was completely sexist, or it was completely just inappropriate and wrong, and science or something has completely disproved that. And you have to reset your brain a bit and go, actually, no, I built several years of my own childhood thinking on the assumption, on the not unreasonable assumption of what I was told by an adult was the true thing, when actually it turned out to just be an opinionated pile of rubbish. And that's not saying my grandparents were for the rubbish. They were very kind people and generally nice. But there were some things that older people said to us as children that were very wrong indeed. And I'm sure that's still the case. Okay, we labour under preconception as all these kind of things as we're growing up. It's very difficult for a child at the age of 6, 7, 8 to go, no, that's not acceptable. I won't accept what you're telling me, Mr. Adult, because that's not how children are wired, is it? So there's all sorts of stuff that builds up as a result of that. So you have to be very cautious, I think, of looking at history through the lens of your own period and making judgment calls on it, because different things were happening, different pressures were happening, society was in a different place, not necessarily better or worse, but just under different influences. Today we have many young people saying many wrong things. Well, I don't think error is something that's exclusive to any age group, is it? I try. I don't. Whether or not I succeed, I have no idea. It's very difficult. I try to be open-minded to things. So, what I've found reasonably encouraging is going back to the writing thing, just to kind of finish the stream off, is in the reviews for my books, I've had equal amounts of criticism for being politically correct and you're pandering to the woke brigade on one hand. I've had that criticism from anonymous reviewers on the internet, because on the internet nobody knows you're a dog. And on the flip side, I've had you're supporting the patriarchy and you're anti-feminist, and you're writing and you're a middle-aged man and you shouldn't be allowed to publish books. I've had that as well. So I feel if I'm getting equal criticism in roughly the same amounts, I'm probably okay, right? And I've learned over the years not to be too bothered by it. In the old, years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I'd have been a bit more kind of, what have I written? What have I written that's offended somebody? And nowadays, you can't stop. There's nothing you can do. People will be offended by anything that they want to be offended by. Okay, so don't worry too much about offending people. I think if you personally conduct yourself with, a bit of decorum, a bit of restraint, the ability to listen and consider somebody's point of view. I'm always willing to entertain a contrary point of view. I will draw the line if people are abusive. Okay, so you may have seen me on Twitter. There's been a few things in recent months where I've stated my opinion, and quite a few people haven't liked it. Okay. Naming no names, computer games that we shall not mention, and I'm entitled to my opinion. Thank you very much. Now, if you disagree with my opinion, that's absolutely fine. Okay, I have no problem with you disagreeing with my opinion. But if you decide to insult me and be abusive, that's not acceptable. Okay, instant mute. You're gone. You've disappeared from my universe. Okay, I'm not accepting that kind of rubbish. If you have a cogent argument and you state it well, brilliant. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. But if you resort to abuse, that's it. You game over. All right. I'm not putting up with that anymore. I don't have the time for it, and I'm not interested. If you resort to that sort of tactic, that's it. Game off. You're off the playing board. Okay, I just don't accept it. you can reason, you can argue, you can debate, you can do all those things without resorting to abuse. And if it gets to a point of abuse and name calling and mudslinging, that's it. You're off the court. It's as simple as that. It's very, very simple. So there we go. Worse in 99% of everything. So I think taking it back to writing is when you're writing things, be mindful of the integrity of the work that you're producing. That's my thing. Is I want to read. I personally like to read things where the research shines through, the consideration of the bigger picture shines through, the fact that the writer has taken the time to consider the implications of the world they're building, and that shines through the story. It doesn't need to be there in every piece of description. There needs to be a sense of integrity to the story, which pushes the whole thing and brings it up to a slightly higher level. Now, that's not trying to be snobby about the literature value or the literary value of a piece of work, but I just like to aim for a higher quality of writing. I suppose that seems to be a thing. Okay, so if you're an okay person, you're a communist for a partner Nazi on the other side. Well, this is the thing, Dennis. It's so annoying to me that you have to be on one side or the other. I never find myself on one side of these debates or the other. I mean, a classic one at the moment, which is raging everywhere, which I saw this evening, is and it's prompted by J.K. Rowling. Now, I don't have a side in this particular debate, and I don't have I don't have an iron in this fire, but I can see both sides of this argument. So, for example, trans people and women who are women from assigned gender at birth. I understand both sides of this argument, and I can sympathise with both sides of this argument as well. I don't see a resolution where they can both be satisfied, and yet both sides seem to be entrenched in saying that the other side has to capitulate entirely. That seems to be the impression I get, and that is not a realistic position. You've got to compromise in life, and I don't get involved in those kind of arguments because A, I don't have a solution, B, I don't stand with either side 100%. So I'm not getting involved in that kind of argument because I don't want to fight a fight that I don't see is winnable, if you like. It's a debate where you have to be polarised, and I don't like to be polarised. I don't see the world as polarised. I see the world as various shades of grey. Not 50 Shades of Grey, I hasten to add. But I find those, and it's the same thing in politics, that you must be left wing or you must be right wing. And if you're right wing, you are evil and irredeemable. And no, it just isn't that black and white. So I find those things very uncomfortable. And if somebody has a strong opinion, other people will vilify that person or ridicule that person. I've certainly experienced that over the last few weeks. Over something, over a computer game, actually, that doesn't, in the great scheme of things, matters not at all. Okay, but I have been lampooned and mercilessly taken apart on certain parts of the internet for having opinions on things. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm big enough and ugly enough not to have to worry about these things. But it does happen, and people expect you to be very polarised. And I think it's important for us to resist being polarised because I don't think it's a helpful stance. So that's interesting. And you and your characters in the books that criticise even from Earth and gone through our history, so that's right. So there's one opinion that you're wrong and I'm right, Drew. A leak without you is terrible. You must stay with us. Dear. Do you read poetry, Drew? I've recently noticed that fewer and fewer engage poetry lately. I must admit, poetry is never something I've really spent a lot of time with. I ought to. It is kind of on my long list of things to kind of to spend some time with, but I haven't. No. Agreeing to disagree is a great skill. I mean, I'm a natural diplomat, you see. I don't. It's not that I don't like conflict. I will engage with conflict, and I'm quite mischievous actually. Sometimes I will stoke conflict just to find out what happens because I'm quite mischievous. But I am a natural diplomat. I will always try and seek common ground between what I would consider personally to be extremist views, regardless of what the subject area is. So I'm not fond of labels. I've kind of put it slightly jokingly on my Twitter feed. I don't like ists and isms because I don't find them useful things. I am not a label. I'm not defined by a label. So I don't subscribe to those things. I don't fit into any of those categories. Don't put me in a category; it won't work. I don't even write in my fiction. I don't even write in pure genres. I go, no, I'm a bit of both, which is another thing. Genres, etc. Argument about trans poetry. I don't see winners. Both has good points of view, but it's impossible not to be politicised. So and the politicalisation. And the thing is that if you this whole business of if you aren't with us, you're against us kind of thing. I don't find that at all helpful. That feels to me very uncomfortable. The nuance of debate nowadays just doesn't exist. If you ask a reasonably sensible question, you postulate a what if to someone who is very polarised, they will instantly categorise you as anti whatever it is that they stand for, or at least the tendency is for them to categorise you as anti whatever the thing is you stand for. And an awful lot of people come with loaded presuppositions. Now, I don't get involved mostly because I don't have the time. But I would, if I did have the time, I would be interested in having debates with a lot of these, a lot of these people. But being white, middle class, and middle-aged, I can't enter those debates. Okay, I just can't because I would not be perceived as being neutral, and I probably am not neutral. I probably do have assumed biases and all those kind of natty things as well. But I would do my best to be as neutral as possible. But I fear, and this may be unreasonable, I fear that I would be judged as being not neutral simply by turning up to the debate. So I don't engage. On my Twitter feed, there's only a few things I do engage in, and mostly it's dad puns, dad puns and various other things. Because I think it's, I would love to have time to get into those debates, and I would welcome those debates with people who were prepared to have a debate and acknowledge their position wasn't polarised, because no true position can be polarised like that. I don't think, in the fact that we are right and you are wrong. That is not a helpful negotiating position to start from. There's nowhere to negotiate to, is there? That nuance to me is just missing. Either you're with us or you're against us. Either you're my friend or you're my enemy. No, that just isn't how it is in reality. And I don't know if that's Twitter being the lens through which we view things, or Facebook, or any of the other social media things. But it doesn't seem to be much different in the popular press or in a lot of the literature nowadays either. So there we go. I don't know. That's just me rambling on about a completely different topic. Well, let's talk about that one next week. I think the historical context of literature is an important thing. We should definitely have a delve into that next week. I think that would be quite interesting. So there we go. If you're a union rep, you have to support Labour. It's well, no, there you are. You see, I mean that's in the UK. I've voted. Dangerous admission. I have voted right wing and left wing in my time for what I thought were the most important, or least damaging, shall we say, values of the party in question at the time, because sometimes the economy is more important. Sometimes social welfare is more important. Sometimes National Health Service is more important, depending on, in my analysis anyway, depending on what's going on in the country at the time. To vote for one side slavishly with no consideration of the virtues of the other is doing yourself and the country a disservice, in my humble opinion. But there we go. Alan, so to anyone with less money than myself, I'm a capitalist, and to anyone with more, I'm a socialist. So, that's right, it depends on your... well, you're rich, so you can afford to vote like that. Well, that's difficult as well. Even Dru-ism is beyond me. Yeah, no, I can't even do that. I mean, what would Dru-ism be? Lots of waffling. Dennis, I think you're not going to like this, but we need politics like you. I suppose from an individual perspective, I will try and see good in people. My default attitude when I meet somebody new is you're a reasonable person, let's have a chat. That's my kind of outgoing person. But if they quickly come across as judgmental, or they make assumptions about where I'm coming from without listening to my position, or they dismiss me, or they're simply rude, then that's it. I don't indulge them any further in conversation. And I don't know. Maybe that's because I've got the confidence and age and wisdom, dare I say it, to not be bothered by that anymore. But I don't care whether people like me or not. Doesn't bother me if you go, Drew, he's an absolute blackguard. Yep, cool, no worries. It doesn't bother me. If people like listening to my you guys are here on the stream, okay, you're still here, so I do appreciate company. That's very good. But if what I say offends you or annoys you, then feel free to depart. It's okay. You're not going to offend me. It's fine. In fact, if you to a union, everything Conservative is evil and everything Labour do is great. Says that it can't be right, can it? It just can't be right. I know some left-wing and right-wing politicians, okay, and I've met them and I've worked with them in various different capacities, and and politicians do very, very stupid things, but very, very few of them are actually genuinely bad people who mean harm to people. That's just a characterization which is convenient for for many people to explain. The truth is far more nuanced than that. Okay, yes, some of them are bumbling fools, but very few of them set out with the intention of causing evil. Okay. It's just it's not the case. I've always believed anybody who follows any kind of ideology unquestionably to be dangerous. I think you're right. I mean, I think I have much more respect to someone who goes, you know what, actually, I'll take that from this side, but I'll take that from this side, and I've changed my mind on this, having read about it. Now, I mean, I'll hold my hand up. For many years, particularly in the noughties, 2000 onwards, I was extremely sceptical of global warming claims. Okay, very, very sceptical indeed. And I thought this just smacks to me of manipulation for the sake of raising taxes and various other bits and pieces. I was very, very sceptical. Okay, very, very sceptical for a long, long time. And in fact, it wasn't probably until about 2008-ish. When I started delving into some of the scientific literature and reading about it, then I actually thought, no, I was wrong. Global warming genuinely is a man-made problem, and I'm going to recant my position, because I had previously been saying, no, I think it's all made up, and I think it's natural climate change. And I okay, for some people the jury's still out on that one, but I don't think it is, personally. I think we've we've screwed the planet to a degree, and I think we have to take consideration of that. I think my position on that has changed because I've reviewed some stuff. That's the petrol head in me. Yeah, so I mean, I still do like, obviously internal combustion engine cars, and I have some. So some people say, hang on, how can you possibly reconcile the position of being worried about global warming when you still got lots of petrol cars. Well, my defence of that is I don't use them very often. So I maybe travel a combined 2,000 or 3,000 miles a year in all of my cars. So is it wrong to have a series of them because they're already made, so the carbon footprint of manufacturing them is already gone? Yes, I do race them around racetracks occasionally, which is not very eco things, but I'm I'm kind of working on that one. I can't abandon everything in one go, so I'm not perfect, okay? So, great revelation for the stream. Dru, Wagar is not perfect. And there are contradictions in my life. And that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means that I'm a human, okay? I have foibles, I have weaknesses, I have things that I haven't fully reconciled. That doesn't mean that everything I say can be instantly discounted because, we found one flaw in your personality. There are many, many flaws in my personality, and if you need to have them all articulated, you can go and talk to my wife. Humans are naturally contradictive people. Just because somebody fails at something or has inconsistencies in what they do doesn't mean that you can write off 100% of who or what they are. That's not a reasonable position to adopt. It's nuanced. I'm sounding like I'm lecturing now. But it is. Everything's a nuanced position, okay? You can't just say, no, well, that guy made a mistake, so everything he's done is eradicated. That's it, game over. That's not a realistic position. But so many people seem to get, that's it, well, we found a flaw with that person. That is that their value, their opinion is now worthless on every single subject matter ever, forever, and their position is irredeemable. It's like, well, that's not how things operate. So there we go. Kelly Backlash says, I'm scheduled to be very offended tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to be quite indifferent. Falcon 712 says, climate change is the biggest scam by the government to get normal people to pay carbon taxes, even though we're a carbon-based life form. Well, yeah, see, I mean, and I'm quite happy to have a debate with people on this particular subject, because I agree, actually, from the perspective of individual contributors like you and I, that unless the corporations and the governments actually sort their act together, I mean, the differences that we can make as individuals are pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things. So the action does have to come from the big corporations and the government on this particular stuff. Why should we as individual contributors, at our low end of the supply chain, be penalised for such a massive problem that actually the governments have had plenty of time, massive resources, and lots of investigation to be aware of and fix, long before it came into kind of public mind? I think that's an argument that can be made. All that sort of stuff. And like you say, following an ideology slavishly without recourse to considering that you might in fact be wrong is a dangerous ground. And I do want people to take care of their environment if it's in their power. Yeah, I mean, that's right. Let's leave the world a better place than it arrived in, because what's the harm in that? Even let's take global warming and everything out of the question. Let's say it's not true. Okay, what's the worst that can happen? We make the planet nicer. Yay! Yeah, that's okay. I think I'll go with that. The question is, how many serious failings should you allow someone in power before you do them off and as being a useless? Yeah, I think there's a case. I mean, you've got to judge people by what they achieve, right? You do have to judge people by what they achieve and what they do. And we should have high standards of the people we elect to positions of power. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. With great power comes great responsibility. These people should be paragons of virtue. They should be the best of us, okay? And often they are not. They are extremely fallible, greedy individuals who shouldn't be there at all. And that is a problem. But what's interesting is when it comes down to it, when it comes down to the popular vote. Okay. Now, if you look in the UK, and I can't speak for other countries, but in the UK in particular, for many years in succession now, we have elected through our voting system a right-wing conservative government. Okay, and no matter how people shout and scream on social media for people to get out of their, get off their backsides and vote for an opposition. the same voting pattern happens again. It's still a minority government in the sense that less than 50% of people voted for it, but that's the political system that we have. But the vast majority of people, despite all of the the press and the social media outrage over conservative right-wing evil, don't either vote for right-wing stuff because they're conservative themselves and they just don't admit it and they don't come out and debate, or they don't vote at all, in which case they clearly can't be bothered about the outcome. So okay, if everyone was really all that bothered about right-wing conservatism, it wouldn't get voted in, would it? So it's difficult. Actions speak louder than words. Yeah, so we must stop talking about it and go do something. To stop the use of coal and oil in the next few decades is very difficult. And Harry Seldon from from Foundation series, a literary character, of course. I'm pretty pessimistic about it, to be honest, because I personally can't see us as human beings getting to grip with this problem until actually it's forced upon us. I just don't think we're capable of it. I don't think our political structures, our cultural sophistication, and our individual selfishness. I mean, take me. I mean, I've got a collection of classic cars which I rather like, and I like to occasionally take them around a racetrack, which is an entirely pointless thing. And I logically know that in my head, but it's a bit of a laugh with my friends, right? And I like doing it. So there's a real contradiction there, because part of me is going, yay, save the planet. And the other part of me going, no, race car, And I think many of us are in that position. There's a lot more we could all individually do to save the planet, right? But at the cost of doing things that we enjoy doing. And changing our lifestyles dramatically. Now, some of us will push to the end of those extremes and work really hard at it. Others will go, okay, solve that for Game of Soldiers, I'm just going to have a laugh. If the planet's burning, what the hell? And most of us are in between those two extremes, possibly tending one way or another. It isn't wrong to not be an extremist. I don't think. But overall, looking at it, with everything in there, the vast majority of people are going to tend to the middle of that, and are only really going to change their habits when something forces them to change their habits. So, in case of my mucking about with classic cars, going around racetracks and having a bit of a laugh, only when that becomes prohibitively expensive would I stop doing it, I suspect. And at the moment, it isn't prohibitively expensive, and so I kind of still do it. So, and part of me is going, this is, I should really be rethinking. I should go home and rethink my life. And the other part of me is going, well, yeah, but China is pushing out massive pollution through coal-powered power stations. Me driving a supercharged MX-5 around a racetrack 3 times a year really isn't going to make enough difference. If I stop doing it, nothing's really going to change. Now, the problem is that if everybody thinks that me doing nothing won't have an impact, then it won't have an impact. Whereas if everyone actually stopped doing some of these things, maybe it would have an impact. And those are the sort of things that spin around in your head after a while, and then after a while you can go get a bit loony. So I don't know, but I'm pessimistic, really, of humanity's ability to come together and solve such a complicated problem, because historically we just can't do it. Humans are not very good at organising themselves beyond, let's say, I don't know, maybe 50, 100 people. We just can't do it. We don't have the social structures to enable it, I don't feel. So I am a bit pessimistic about whether or not we're going to get grips to it. I think it's just going to get worse until such time as nature itself stops us from doing some of the things by virtue of resource extinction, and we actually just end up fighting each other and get rid of the excess population that way, and then the world recovers and we adapt to whatever the world is at that point in time. That's, I fear, is going to be where we end up, but I don't know. I hope it isn't, kind of, but that's where I feel we're going. The masses are lazy, especially here in America. If you told Americans that eating 5 cheeseburgers a day would make them wealthy and healthy, they would believe you. 8 billion tons of coal are burnt in the world every year. There's no way to turn that off. No, I think that's wrong. It's extreme not to be an extremist. I'm an extreme moderate from the neutral planet. 4 million lemmings can't be wrong. Dear. And we can't really do anything about climate change because of China, and China won't dump coal until the thorium nuclear program is successful. So there's so many big issues beyond us as individuals to kind of cope with. So I don't know what you can do. You can only organise human beings at the local levels. Americans are just now waking up to that revelation, which is why you see many people going after the school boards. I think there's so many issues, and to quote a Genesis song, there's too many people making too many problems, and not enough love to go around. I am pessimistic. I fear we're going to end up in a position where actually we do continue to trash the planet because we can't make the difficult decisions ourselves. So ecological disasters and uninhabitable areas and sea level rises, everything else that goes with it, will simply force us to do certain things. And I don't think until we're forced to jump will we actually jump. I suspect. We'll see. Interesting, it doesn't really matter in the long term as the collapse of the Antarctic drift will plunge most of the UK under ice. Okay. So, more MX-5s around racetracks is what I'm hearing there. This is truly the land of confusion. Thank you very much. Anyway, my friends, let's pick up the history thing, the context of literature and history next week. And I think that would be a very interesting stream. There might be some interesting conclusions and certainly an interesting debate. And let's not be extremist about it, because I think, again, both sides of these debates. I get why people are upset and are pulling down statues of people who, endorsed slavery. I get that. But do I agree with it? No, I don't. And I'm not clear on my own thinking, so I'm going to have to do a bit of thinking between now and next week. So that would be quite good. So let's go there and boldly go where no Dru has gone before. And let's look at some of these controversial topics, because I think if we can explore, the arguments in a sense, and I'm not saying we need to settle on a position. We don't have to solve it, but let's look at the arguments and just sort of see what's going on, because I think that's a healthy thing. I think the more we can actually debate, if we have a debate where our objective isn't to convince the opposite party of their error or our righteousness, but simply to seek to understand the position, that to me feels like a healthier place to be, and maybe some common ground can emerge in that process. But I don't expect to find common ground, but I'd like to hear from all sides of that spectrum, and just consider the viewpoints without necessarily coming to a conclusion. So it is hard to debate without emotion. It is, but it's, and I'm not saying we should ban all emotion. That would make us like the Vulcans. It would be extremely logical, but probably not much fun. But you've got to take some of the heat out of that debate. You've got to take the personal out of the topic, I think. And too many people debate from a position of being. I don't like this word, offended. I don't think it's a useful phrase, but too many people have suffered at the hands of other people who they associate with certain issues, and I get that there's personal hurt in some of these things, and that makes it very difficult to debate, because I've been hurt by a thing, then that thing is bad. I can get that association, but that isn't always the case. Let's go there. I think this stream has been around long enough, and I think most of the people on it are capable of being a little bit dispassionate about these sort of things. Let's see where it takes us. I think maybe it's a brave thing to do, but it's a type of discourse that I don't think is very common, and I think maybe it will do us good. But dangerous ground, but I'm game. Let's see what happens. It could be fun. The Socratic method, employing suspension disbelief until one's position is better understood. Well, I don't know whether you guys agree with this, but I find that if somebody makes a good case for something, I can appreciate that viewpoint. I won't necessarily agree with it, but I can understand that it does make sense in a context. And I think if I can get to that stage, with opposing views on the subject, then I'm hopefully getting to the point where I understand both sides of the argument. I think it's dangerous to have an instinctual "this is correct, therefore I must assemble evidence that only supports my perspective." I think that's a very dangerous thing that people do now. They only filter by stuff that agrees with a viewpoint that they've already decided that is the right one. I mean, that isn't a helpful position, is it? I'll hold my hand up. I am a global warming convert. Okay, I vehemently resisted it for a long time, and now I believe it's a genuine thing that we've caused, and we need to do something about it. Ideally, I don't like ists and isms. I'm not very fond of entrenched positions, and I'm not a fan of if you're not my friend, you're my enemy. As I think life is more nuanced than that. I'm also I don't like being drawn on something when I don't have enough information about it. Carl Sagan was very good at this. He said, somebody asked him, is there alien life in the universe? And he responded with, "I don't know." And they said, "Well, you must have an opinion." And he said, "No, I don't. There isn't enough information for me to have an opinion. So I'm quite comfortable saying to you, I don't have an opinion on this topic right now. I can point you out the sort of possibilities that there could be, but I don't have an opinion because there aren't enough facts." And I think that's very wise. And I also think, I'm sorry, I can't support your position. I understand you're upset, and I understand you feel very strongly about this, but I don't understand this topic well enough for me to be able to support your position. I just don't know enough about this topic. And that doesn't mean I'm not supporting you, but it doesn't mean I am supporting you either at this stage, because I don't know enough about this topic yet to give you a reasonable opinion. Sorry, I can't help you. That is not an unreasonable place to be. You shouldn't be forced to pick a side in any topic unless you're aware of the topic, in my humble opinion. I am very much not afraid to say, I don't know. What's your position on the XYZ? I don't have a position. What do you mean you don't have a position? I don't have a position. It's outrageous you don't have a position. Well, maybe it is, but I don't feel that being unknowledgeable about a subject is a position that many of us are unfamiliar with. There's an awful lot of things I don't know. That's my default position. I'm sorry, I don't know enough about the topic yet. I'm not qualified to speak on it. So there we go. First time chat. Xena Tutor. My post global warming novel is still in an edit. So yeah. So keep going with it. Actually, my Shadewood saga is based on. I haven't actually covered it in the story because it's much long after, but it's a post-apocalyptic novel, effectively, in the sense that we didn't get to grips with global warming, we had to leave the Earth. So I've kind of built that into the story anyway. So there we go. Anyway, my friends, it is time. It's time to waffle off and do something else. We've been going quite a long time on that one. Let's go there next week. Let's have a talk about history and the context of literature in history. I think that's going to be quite an interesting one. So there we go. Lovely to have you all aboard. Thank you very much for your attention tonight. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all the new folks who turned up and just said hello and joined the conversation. It's a dare I say it, it's a safe space. I know that's again another loaded phrase, but you are free to have different views to me on this stream. I'm not the it's absolutely fine. I may disagree with you, but that's okay as well. Okay, so we'll go on from there. It's mutual respect. As long as people are not abusive, a lot of people are accept that others have different views from themselves, and polarization is not necessarily a good thing, and there are nuanced views, and that's acceptable. Everything's good. Let's go from there and see. Right, so back on Thursday, of course, with more of my Elite Dangerous tour, for those of you who joined me on that. So thank you very much for everybody who turned up last week. Thursday will be more Elite Dangerousing. Saturday, obviously, I'll continue with my retro gameplay through of Wing Commander 3, actually, which was surprisingly good. And then we'll be back for this interesting history discussion next Monday. So thank you very much if you enjoyed this evening. Lovely to have you along. Keep writing, my friends. That's always the thing. We need to keep writing about these issues because we have powerful tools at our disposal to inform and educate our colleagues out there in the social spaces about all the things that we consider to be important. That's a lot of what writing is all about. So keep writing. Don't ever stop writing. Always keep writing. Take care, my friends. Be good, and I will see you Thursday, Saturday, and next Monday. Be good. Take care. Have a fantastic week ahead, and I will see you soon. Take care, my friends. Bye bye now.